Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are taking a guided spatial journey straight down the human body to completely master the nursing head-to-toe assessment. Whether you're a nursing student gearing up to ace those clinical checkoffs, or honestly just someone fascinated by how medical professionals systematically decode the human body, you are exactly in the right place. We're going to look at how a trained nurse assesses literally everything, from the hair on the head all the way down to the toes, gathering absolute life-saving information at every single step.
So here is our roadmap for the assessment. We'll start with prep and a general survey, then move to the head, face, and neck, travel down to the chest for the heart and lungs, explore what we call the abdominal exception, and finally wrap up with the extremities and the back.
Section 1. Prep and General Survey. Establishing the baseline. Let's get right into it.
Now, before we even lay a finger on a patient, we have to talk about the golden rule of assessment. For almost every single bodily system we are going to look at today, we follow this exact sequence. First, you inspect with your eyes. Second, you palpate or feel. Third, you percuss, which is tapping to listen for underlying density. And finally, you auscultate, listening with your stethoscope. You really want to burn this order into your memory because it's the core rhythm of your physical exam. Right when you walk in the door, after providing privacy and washing your hands, you introduce yourself and interact immediately. You're looking to see if the patient is alert and oriented ×4. How? By asking specific orientation questions. You check if they know who they are, their date of birth, where they are right now, and current events. You know, like who the president is, even if they might prefer to forget. If they can answer these seamlessly, you've just checked off a major neurological baseline.
And while you're having that chat, you are rapidly collecting their vital signs. You're grabbing their heart rate, blood pressure, temperature, oxygen saturation, and respiratory rate. You'll also ask them to rate their pain on a scale of 0 to 10. But here's the thing. Your eyes and ears are working overtime here too. You're observing their emotional status. Are they calm? Are they agitated? You're looking at their hygiene, their posture, and even noticing if there are any abnormal smells in the room.
We also must tie those vitals to concrete numbers by calculating their BMI, or body mass index, using their height and weight. You are specifically watching to see if that number drops to 18.5 or below, which means they're underweight, or if it rises to 30 or above, putting them in the obese category. Every single number tells a piece of this patient's story.
Section 2. Head, face, and neck. Beginning the top-down journey. Gloves on. You start right at the top by palpating the cranium, feeling for any masses or indentations. And don't just look for infestations like lice or patches of alopecia. You need to actively feel the back of the head. Why? Well, if your patient is immobile, they spend a ton of time resting right on that exact spot, and skin breakdown frequently hides exactly there. Moving down to the eyes, we test the cranial nerves and rely on our first major mnemonic, PPRL. After checking for that involuntary shaking we call nystagmus, you check that their 3 to 5 millimeter pupils are equal and round. When you shine your pen light, they should be reactive to light, constricting down to maybe 1 millimeter. And finally, they should be accommodating, meaning when they follow your pen light inward toward their nose, the pupils should constrict and the eyes should cross perfectly.
Next up, the ears. Beyond checking the outside for tenderness or maybe a buildup of uric acid crystals from gout, you're going to use your otoscope to look inside. You want to see a pearlescent gray, shiny tympanic membrane. But you really need to notice the specific clock face angles for the cone of light reflection. In the right ear, it should sit at exactly 5 o'clock, and in the left ear, you'll find it at 7 o'clock. After that, we test the nose for patency and a sense of smell before moving down to the mouth. You use a tongue blade to ensure the mucous membranes are nice and pink, not beefy red or dry. But when inspecting the mouth, why do we explicitly ask the patient to lift their tongue? Because that area underneath the tongue is prime real estate. It's exactly where mouth cancer likes to hide out.
Section 3. Chest, heart, and lungs. Listening for the lub-dub.
So, we've inspected the neck and checked those bounding carotid arteries. And now we are focusing our stethoscope on listening for the clear lub-dub of the heart. To easily memorize the 5 distinct locations to auscultate heart valves, you can lean on this simple but super powerful cognitive aid. All patients effectively take medicine. The first letter of each word maps directly to a location on the chest. Let's actually spell that out. All stands for the aortic valve at the right sternal border. Patience is the pulmonic valve on the left. Effectively drops us down to Erb's point.
take is the tricuspid valve, and medicine is the mitral valve. This sequence physically maps your stethoscope's journey straight down the chest. When you reach that final mitral valve, which is also known as the point of maximal impulse, you'll pause. You listen to the apical pulse for 1 full minute here, just ensuring it sits in that normal range of 60 to 100 beats per minute. Now for the lungs, you're listening anteriorly and posteriorly. You absolutely must remember that our internal anatomy differs side to side. The right lung has 3 lobes, while the left lung only has 2. As you inch your way down, you're always comparing the right side to the left side, listening for abnormal sounds like crackles, wheezes, or stridor. And a quick pro tip, when listening on the back, make sure you listen between the spine and the scapula. You want to avoid the scapula bones entirely so you can actually hear the airflow. Section 4. The abdominal exception, breaking the rules. Okay, we are halfway down the body, and here we uncover a major plot twist. We established our ground rules earlier, right? Inspect, palpate, percuss, auscultate. But you have to ask yourself this incredibly important question before you ever push down on a patient's stomach. Why do we completely change our routine here? Well, for the abdomen, the order completely flips. It becomes inspect, auscultate, percuss, and then palpate. We absolutely must listen to the belly with our stethoscope before we use our hands to touch or press on it. If we were to palpate or percuss first, the actual physical pressure and stimulation could artificially alter the patient's bowel sounds, giving us a completely false baseline. Once you've inspected the contour of the abdomen, you listen clockwise through the 4 quadrants, starting right in the right lower quadrant. Normally, you'll hear anywhere from 5 to 30 sounds per minute, but keep this magic number in mind, 5. If the belly is completely silent, you can't just document absent bowel sounds and move on. No way. You must listen for a full 5 minutes before making that clinical determination. Once you're done listening, then you can proceed to light and then deep palpation.
Section 5. Extremities and the back. Completing the journey.
What's really interesting here is that a simple visual inspection of the lower legs can reveal deep vascular secrets that the patient might not even feel or know about. You're looking at the color from the legs all the way to the toes, but you are also looking very closely at hair growth. See, you are connecting rote physical actions to vital critical thinking here. If you see hairless, shiny, thin legs, that's a massive clue pointing directly toward peripheral vascular disease. If you notice redness isolated in the big toe joint, that could be the start of gout. For diabetic patients who often completely lack feeling in their feet due to neuropathy, you must inspect the soles for unnoticed foot ulcers. And finally, you'll press firmly over the tibia bone to check for pitting edema, basically seeing if your finger leaves an indentation in the tissue. To finish up your extremity checks, you'll find their pulses, like the popliteal behind the knee or the dorsalis PD on the foot, and check capillary refill on the toes. Then, grab your reflex hammer to test the Babinski reflex. You'll run the end of the tool up through the ball of the foot. You are looking for that normal, negative response where the toes curl downward and inward. To wrap the entire assessment up, you turn the patient over to inspect their back, paying special attention to the coccyx for any final signs of skin breakdown. And just like that, we have traveled from the crown of the head to the soles of the feet. Every single inspection, palpation, and auscultation we discussed today is a crucial tool to decode the human system. You now hold the map. So the real question is, the next time a patient's life is in your hands, how will you adapt this spatial journey to uncover the unique, hidden, life-saving clues that others might miss? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep observing out there.